Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Upper Gwynedd Township Zoning Hearing Board meeting for Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. As permitted by Act 15 of 2020, tonight's hearing is being held virtually. In addition to being stenographically recorded, tonight's e-hearing is being live streamed on the township's website, uppergwynedd.org, and on Facebook. I would ask that everyone please stay muted when they are not speaking. So if you are not currently on mute, please put yourself on mute. Also, in order for the stenographer to accurately capture the proceedings, it is important that only one person speak at a time. All applicants for tonight's hearings were notified in advance and provided instructions on how to participate electronically. Applicants were also requested to provide copies of any exhibits they intend to use so that the same could be made available for public review on the township's website in advance of tonight's meeting. I would ask that if any applicant tonight introduces an exhibit that was not previously provided and made available on the township's website, that the applicant make specific note of this so that the board and the public are aware. The Zoning Hearing Board has required that all applicants and their witnesses participate in tonight's hearing using both audio and visual capabilities. Anyone wishing to be a party to the proceedings is also invited to participate using both audio and visual capabilities. For those who wish only to provide public comment, you can participate via audio and will be permitted at the appropriate time to state your comments on the pending application. Please remember that you will need to state your name and address for the record before offering your public comment. Okay, so Mr. Hitchens, at this time, would you like to announce any executive sessions?
Certainly. I would like to announce for the public that the Zoning Hearing Board met in executive session on May 5th of 2021 to deliberate with regard to application 21-04 for 222 Hunter Lane, and that the Zoning Hearing Board will be voting tonight with regard to that application. Additionally, I would like to announce that the Zoning Hearing Board met in executive session tonight before tonight's meeting to discuss procedural matters related to in-person meetings in light of the revised governor's order and the CDC guidance.
Thank you, Mr. Hitchens. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do tonight, so we're going to render a decision for hearing number 21-04, and I'm just going to read the previous notice so that we have it. So it's Chris Perez and Megan Krejci of 222 Hunter Lane, North Wales, Pennsylvania 19454, for property located at the same address for a variance from section 195-12.B.3 to permit a front yard setback of 34 feet, where 50 feet is required for the construction of a 14-foot by 16-foot sunroom front entrance to the existing dwelling. The property is zoned R2 residential. So would anyone like to present a motion here? Would anyone like to present a motion here as to this matter?
Are you asking for a decision on it, Mark, or what are you asking?
Yep.
Yeah, would anyone like to present a motion so that we can make a decision here?
All right, I make a motion that we move on not granting this request.
Okay, so we have a motion to not grant the request. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to not grant the request, and then it has been seconded. So all in favor, raise your hands. Aye. Okay, the ayes have it, and the motion passes, and the appeal is not granted.
Please let the record reflect that that was a unanimous denial of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Hitchens, for providing that clarification. All right, so moving on. So the next hearing we're actually going to skip a little bit ahead in the agenda, and we're going to start with hearing number 21-07. And then that's, and again, I apologize if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, Talat Kahit of 1 Ivy Lane, Lansdale, Pennsylvania, 19446, for property located at the same address. And this is for a variance from section 195-12.b.4 to permit a side yard setback of 7 feet, where 20 feet is required to permit the construction of an addition to an existing garage. The property is zoned R2 residential. Okay, so I would ask that all parties please identify themselves for the record, please.
Yeah, I'm Talat Beckett. I live in 1 Ivy Lane, Lansdale.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and the setback is gonna be like more than 7 foot because, you know, the addition, there is a space between the garage and.
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to be sworn in first.
Yeah, but wait, 1 second, Mr. Bakit. We have some procedural matters we'll do first, but then
Okay,
we'll let you know when it's your chance to explain what it is you're looking for.
okay.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Hitchens, could you please mark any board exhibits at this time?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. First, let the record reflect that I incorrectly spelled the applicant's name wrong on the notice, so I apologize to the applicant. It is Bakit, B-E-K-H-I-T. So that was my mistake, and I do apologize.
No problem.
At this time, I would like to mark the following items as exhibits for the board, as ZHB1 will be a proof of publication and a legal notice for tonight's hearing. For ZHB2 will be a copy of the verification of the posting for tonight's hearing. As ZHB3 will be a copy of the township website notice for tonight's hearing. ZHB4 will be a copy of the parcel map with the addresses for the mailed notice for tonight's hearing. ZHB5 will be a copy of the applicant's application. ZHB6 will be a copy of a plot plan as submitted by the applicant. And ZHB7 will be a copy of an email from a George McLeer, that's M-C-L-E-E-R, of 97 Ivy Lane, dated May 22nd, 2021. And at this time, Mr. Chairman, this is a public comment. I would ask if I could read that email into the record.
Yes, certainly.
This is an email from Mr. McLeer to the applicant, Mr. Bakit, stating, "To whom it may concern, be advised that I have no objection to a request for a variance to permit a side yard setback from 20 feet to 7 feet. George McLeer, 97 Ivy Lane, Upper Gwynedd Township."
Thank you, Mr. Hitchens. All right, so now that we've marked exhibits, I will turn this over to the applicant. And yes, we do need to go ahead and swear in the applicant and any potential witnesses at this point. Mr. Bakit, do you have any, will you be the only one testifying tonight?
Yes,
Okay, Mr. Mangiardi, would you be able to swear him in, please?
Yes, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, but the truth you do so swear or affirm?
yeah, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm saying is the setback is gonna be more than 7 foot because, you know, the space between me and my neighbor's yard in the tide area is 24 foot and we're building 14, we will have 10 foot left.
Mr. Chairman, if I may help these proceedings move forward, if I could ask some questions of Mr. Bakit, that might be helpful to the board in understanding the application.
Yes, certainly. And if there are any exhibits that we want to post on the screen too, that might be helpful as well.
Okay. If you can give me a moment. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to share my screen. Mr. Bakit, I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Mr. Bakit, can you see what I have up on my screen?
Yes.
Okay. And would you agree with me, sir, that this is a copy of the plot plan that you had submitted for your application tonight that I marked as ZHB6?
Yes.
And if, first, Mr. Bakit, you're the owner of the property, correct?
Yes.
And it's my understanding from your application, and as shown here in the plot plan, you're proposing to construct an addition onto your existing garage that will be approximately 14 feet wide.
Yes.
And would you agree with me, Mr. Bakit, that you have a pie-shaped property?
Yeah.
So because of the pie shape of your property, Mr. Bakit, would you agree with me that as you essentially go towards the rear of your property, where I'm showing my cursor, the line gets closer and closer to your existing garage, correct?
Yeah. Yes, I understand, and we measure it.
Yep. And you did not build this house, correct, Mr. Bakit?
No, I bought it as this.
Yep. And you did not subdivide it. You did not create this pie-shaped parcel at all, did you?
No.
And Mr. Bakit, if I understand correctly, you went out and remeasured, and that distance from the corner of your proposed addition to the side yard is in fact not 7 feet, but it's actually 10 feet. Is that?
Yeah, 10 feet after we build the addition. This is what with the measurement we did. Maybe like it's gonna be like 9 foot something. Like if there is some like different with the way, because the ground going in angle. Maybe when you straight the ground, it's gonna be like not exactly 10 foot. Maybe it's gonna be like 9 something. It's not gonna be much different.
Okay.
But it's gonna be more than 7 foot.
And Mr. Bakit, if you could, can you just tell the board what exactly do you plan on using that storage area for?
A storage space. Because I don't have enough room. My garage very tight, and we have cars, we have yard equipment, lawnmower machine, generator, the snow blower. It's a lot of stuff, and now we crowded.
So it's your intention to just essentially store typical typical household equipment or yard equipment.
Yard equipment, and maybe like we put some like house stuff, like maybe like any extra stuff. We don't have a storage, like a storage room for it.
It's not your anticipation to store any hazardous waste or other
No,
hazardous materials in there?
No, at all. Yeah, I understand the risk of that, and I'm an accountant. I know what's going on and stuff like that.
Gotcha. And Mr. Bakit, you spoke to your neighbor that's on this side of your property, the side closest to where the setback variance is requested, correct?
Yes, and my neighbor sent me email back, and I forwarded it to you guys.
And Mr. Bakit, that's the email that identified as ZHB7, in which he had no objection to your requested variance of 7 feet, correct?
Yes, correct.
And the exterior of the addition, is it going to match the existing garage?
Yeah, because the contractor said he would rather to take the roof of the existing garage and make both of them one roof.
Okay.
To make it look nicer,
Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions that I had for Mr. Bakit. I don't know if any of the members of the board have any questions for Mr. Bakit. And let me know if you would like me to take this down or leave it up.
I guess we can take it down for now.
Okay.
So does anyone on the board have any questions?
Mark, I have just one for Patrick, and I just want to make sure that I understand this. The HB7 that we entered in exhibit, that's Mr. McClear, and that is the neighbor that said he is not opposed to this. Is that correct, Patrick?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I have a question for Mr. Bakit. And I was wondering if you had considered not putting the shed attached to your garage, but putting it in the back of your yard so that you would not need a variance.
Yeah, but my both neighbor, like they don't like, we have the yard in the back, it's like triangle, and I'm kind of like block the view for them. And I block the view for myself too, you know, like all three of us was kind of like affected if I put in the backyard, you know. And I made that, I tried to find the choice to be the best of all of us.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So Mark, can I ask another question of Mr. McCree? Your neighbors that surround you, they're all in agreement of what you're doing because it doesn't obstruct their view. It handles what you need to do for your home, and everybody's visual is good. Is that what you're saying and telling
Yes.
us?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Because I spoke with more than one neighbor, you know, and they don't have a problem with this one.
Okay, great. All right, so I guess at this time, are there any other parties that would like to, I guess there are no other parties, that would like to offer any other additional testimony or exhibits before we go ahead to public comment? Okay, so hearing none, I do just want to double check here. Mr. Breeker, have you received any additional comments since the one that was read this evening?
No,
The question was of me, Tilly. The answer is I received one correspondence, and it was the correspondence that was read into the record by Patrick.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, Foster Digital, is there anyone here for public comment for this matter?
There is no public comment.
Okay, great. Thank you. So since we haven't had any public comment, I just want to give everybody an opportunity. Does anyone have anything else before we go ahead and close this hearing? Okay, so hearing none, I will go ahead and close this hearing. Would someone like to make a motion with regard to the pending application?
I'll make a motion that we grant this request, and with the understanding that we know it's not 7 feet. It could be as great as 10 feet, but most likely in the 9 foot, but the neighbors all agree to it.
Mr. Hitchens, is there a way we should formulate this because of the ambiguity to the number of feet?
Yeah, I might suggest if a member of the board would like to make a motion on hearing 2107 of Talat Bekit of 1 Ivy Lane, Lansdale, PA, for property located at the same address, to approve a variance from section 195-12B4 to permit a side yard setback not to exceed 7 feet, but in accordance with the plans as submitted and the testimony provided by Mr. Bekit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hitchens. All right, so would someone like to present that motion in lieu of the previous motion?
Yes, I agree with how Patrick phrased it. So the important part of this is not to exceed 7 feet.
Correct.
So
All right, so then, Ms. McHale, are you offering that motion then?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
All of the items before that, but that's the important part of it. So yes.
So, Mark, sorry, if I could just ask a question or interject.
Yes, go ahead.
So the current request is a 7 foot, so I think the correct way to say it would not be less than 7 feet. So it's a 7 foot setback. The variance would be 13 feet. So it would not exceed 13 feet, but it would not be closer than 7 feet to the side property boundary. I think if it's okay with everybody, I think that would be a more accurate way to have the record read. With all due respect to Mr. Bekit, based on the exhibits and my scaling, this is not a survey. And so we don't have to do this again. I would suggest that you keep the 7 foot variance, and if you don't need it, it's only 7 foot setback, that's great. So the
Okay.
variance would be not greater than 13 feet, and the setback would not be less than 7 feet from the sideline.
And Mr. Chairman, I agree with everything that Mr. Reeker had said, and he correctly corrected me.
Okay.
And it might be helpful for the board. You can just simply say, so moved, in order to confirm the motion that was presented by or suggested by Mr. Van Reeker.
Okay, so would anyone like to move this?
So moved.
Okay, so now do we have a second?
Second,
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and then we have a second. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the ayes so have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pequet.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to give everybody a second to just to adjust if people want to leave the room.
Now, I thank you guys. I'm gonna leave the room now.
Mr. Pequet, you can leave.
Okay.
Unless you
thank-
want to stick around and spend your evening with us, which you're more
No, no, thank you.
than.
Thank you very much, Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. All right, let me- Okay, so I'm now going to read the next hearing that we have tonight, and that's hearing number 21-03, and that's Ramaco Fuels of 103 Carnegie Center, Suite 345, Princeton, New Jersey, for property located at 868 Sumneytown Pike, Lansdale, Pennsylvania, for a variance from section 195-35.I.2b to permit a sign with red or green lights to be within 75 feet of a public right-of-way and within 200 feet of a traffic control device, and a variance from section 195-35.J.2 L2, 195-35.J2L3, 195-35.J.2L5, and 195-attachment 3 relating to sign regulation schedule to permit 2 LED fuel price facade signs with 2 colors for each sign and a total sign area that exceeds 50% of the allowable sign area and a sign height that exceeds 12 feet. The property is zoned C commercial. Okay. And then I would ask that any parties who are here for this matter, if you could please identify yourselves at this time.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is David Shafkowitz. I'm the attorney for the applicant. And with me tonight is Matt Galasso, who will be our witness if necessary.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Gregory Heleniak. I'm here tonight on behalf of the township for this application.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other parties here for this application this evening? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Hitchens, could you please mark any board exhibits at this time?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. So as a reminder, this hearing was opened at the last meeting. And at that time, I marked ZHB exhibits 1 through 7. Briefly, they were as follows. ZHB 1 was the proof of publication. ZHB 2 was the verification of posting. ZHB 3 was the township website notice. ZHB 4 was the parcel map with addresses for the mailed notice. ZHB 5 was the applicant's application with supplement and signed permit documents. ZHB 6 was a letter from applicant, which was a consent to the ZHB, which was a letter from the applicant to the ZHB solicitor requesting that the hearing be scheduled for the April 27th, 2021 meeting. And then ZHB 7 was a letter from the applicant's counsel requesting that the hearing be continued to tonight's meeting of May 25th, 2021. I have no other board exhibits to mark at this time. However, Mr. Shafkowitz, the applicant's attorney, may have further exhibits that he may want to mark.
Okay, thank you. I guess we can wait to do that until after they're sworn in though, correct?
That is certainly correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then, at this time, can we have any potential witnesses sworn in?
Mr. Galasso, are you with us?
Yeah, be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that testimony about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And your full name, sir?
Full name Matthew Galasso,
Can you spell that?
Galasso.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Shafkovitz, pardon me. Do you have any exhibits to enter at this time?
Yeah, we had forwarded to Mr. Hitchens a couple of updated plans. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, there was a couple of housekeeping items which may result in amendment to our application. So if I can just maybe review those with you.
Oh, certainly, certainly.
Yeah, first, we have to change the name of the applicant to, it's actually McDade Realty LLC, which is the equitable owner of the property. And Patrick, I have a copy of the agreement of sale. I can send that to you separately, but Mr. Galasso will testify to that. The other item was, and I apologize for you having to recite all the numbers and letters related to the variances regarding an LED fuel price sign on the facade. The applicant is not going to propose a fuel price sign on the facade. Rather, what the applicant is proposing just the name of the gas station on the canopy. And we'll show you those signs. So I don't know, in my quick review of the ordinance, and I know Mr. Reeker will correct me if I'm wrong, is that I don't know if the name of the gas station, which is Liberty, proposed for the canopy at a size of, I think it's 2x9, so about 18 square feet, requires a variance, but to the extent it does, we'd like to amend our application to request that variance.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reeker, do you believe that would they require a variance for that amendment?
With the amendments, so long as it's David not exceed, or Mike does not exceed, or Matt does not exceed 20 feet in height.
I believe the canopy probably.
Not, you're permitted one sign, one facade sign, we would call one sign on the canopy, the facade sign. So I think that's true. I guess I would like to hear all of the testimony again, but I think that's true. So long as the height above street level, it does not exceed 20 feet. Should it, then the 20-foot height would require a variance.
Right.
Okay, thank you. If you want to go ahead with your case, Mr. Shafkovitz, that's fine. Thank you.
If I may interject, Mr. Chairman, I'm so sorry. I just want to make sure I understand clearly what exactly is being withdrawn from the application based off of the fuel price sign no longer being shown. Mr. Shafkovitz, can you identify which provision of the zoning code that we read that is no longer applicable, just so I can strike it out and I can make sure that I know that that was been withdrawn?
Yeah, I believe all the references to 195-35J, which were 2L2, L3, and L5, and the attachments.
Okay. So,
sorry.
So you're only now requesting just the variance from section 195-35I to B to permit a sign with red or green lights to be within 75 feet of a public right-of-way and with 200 feet of a traffic control device.
That's correct. Okay. And to the extent that the facade sign we're proposing for the canopy exceeds 20 feet and requires a variance as well.
Say, Mark or Patrick, could I ask a single question of
go
Mr.
ahead.
Shafkovitz?
Yeah,
so David, you'll remember, and I'm looking at the original, and I know that you've amended the package for Patrick tonight, and I apologize, I did not bring that back with me. But the original application included, in addition to the signs you mentioned, a sign I'll describe as, because it asked for smoke shop. So back in the beginning, the earlier package that identified smoke shop, those two signs, they're not proposed under the current application, correct?
That is correct. There's actually no sign proposed for the building.
So the building itself, under the canopy, the building itself would have no signage.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. And Mr. Chairman, by way of background, as was correctly stated, the property is located at 868 Town Pike. It's about 1.7 acres in size and as stated in the C commercial district. The property is currently being used as a gas station and convenience store. As the board may know from living in the area, the gas station was previously branded as an Amera gas station. Essentially what's happening is the gas station is being purchased and rebranded to a Liberty gas station. And I'm sure you're familiar with all of your applications related to franchise type businesses. Our franchisor has particular sign requirements, some which, can be in excess of what the municipality requires or finds favorable, but nevertheless, it's part of what is really driving our application tonight. So what the applicant is proposing is, and I'll show the plans shortly, hopefully I can figure out how to share the screen, but is the branding or the Liberty logo on the canopy, and is proposing to change two existing pole signs. One which doesn't require relief just from Amera to Liberty. And the other one is the Amera sign that has the gas pricing on it that is already backlit to an LED sign that just has the gas pricing on it. It just turns out that that sign, as the colors for Liberty, are red and green, and the numbers for the gas pricing are red and green. So we'll show you that. The one thing that is interesting, and Mr. Rico was kind enough to share with us, was there was a prior zoning application in 1992 for the Amico, when it was originally an Amico, and that established these sign locations and granted relief for the two pole signs that exist. The one pole sign that we're going to add the pricing with the red and green lettering or the red and green numbers is in the same spot that it's always been. It's in the same spot that was approved from the 1992 application. It's going to maintain the same size. The only thing we're doing is switching from a backlit white and green sign to a LED kind of red, white, and blue sign with some green in it as well. As stated, these would be two LED signs. There'll be no messaging, no blinking, no changing. They will simply state what the pricing is for the gas at that location. Now, one of the other items that we noticed by requesting these sign colors for this area is that there are similar stations in the vicinity, both Royal Farms and Marathon, which surprisingly use the same color schemes as we do. So part of what we were looking for in requesting the sign relief tonight is to distinguish our station from those. Marathon is just literally across the street from us, has a similar lit green and red sign for their pricing, uses the red, white, and blue configuration. So we think our sign, which is hopefully tastefully proposed, will also distinguish our station from those in the area. So having said that, I could make the attempt to share my screen, Mr. Chairman, and then see if I could show you the signs that were being proposed and then have Mr. Galasso talk about them.
Certainly. And yeah, if you have trouble sharing your screen, Mr. Hitchens, do you have these particular PDFs as well, just in case there's an issue?
I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, so I was actually going to ask Mr. Shafkowitz to go ahead and identify as A1, A2, A, et cetera, for whatever documents. Mr. Shafkowitz has already referenced one document, which I do not have, but he will send to me, which is a copy of the agreement of sale, which I would propose him marking as A1, and then his subsequent documents that he would show. Even if they're a duplicate, I would ask that he just identify them and then send to me separately to make sure I have the correct ones.
No problem. And Patrick, I don't know if you, while you're, there was a previous email when Joe and I, when we were talking, that I sent you those revised plans via PDF, but let me give this a shot. And then, Mr. Chairman, do I need any like authority to share my screen, or it should be okay?
Foster Digital, would Mr. Shafkowitz need anything in order to share his screen?
Nope, all you have to do is click share screen on the bottom bar.
Okay. So when I do have, and I tried to set this up previously, is what I'm showing the board here, and we'll mark as applicant's exhibit A2, is a plan that was prepared to show the location of the signs as they relate to the intersection. So with Mr. Galasso sworn in, I can go through some testimony with him at this point.
Oh, go ahead.
Matt, are you there?
I'm there.
Just for the record, can you state your name and by whom you're employed?
My name is Matt Galasso, employed with McDade Realty, LLC.
And in what capacity are you employed?
I'm a construction and compliance manager for them.
Are you familiar with this location, which is subject to tonight's application?
Yes, I am.
And are you also familiar with the sign package that was proposed?
Yes.
Now, I understand that McDade Realty and its affiliates operate several other Liberty gas stations.
That's correct. I would say there's around 40 other Liberty gas stations that we are operating right now.
Are most of those or a majority of those located at an intersection?
The majority of them are at an intersection or a corner property, yes.
And with traffic control devices such as traffic lights?
Yes.
And do you use a similar sign package as we are proposing tonight for those intersections?
So what we're proposing tonight is the standard branding package that Liberty provides for us. So we use that at all of our stations.
Okay, so I'm going to refer you to applicant's exhibit A1, and if you could just generally explain to the board what this depicts.
Sure.
Do you see that?
Just to clarify for the record, that's A2.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hitchens, you're right. My apologies. And that we've called this a photo location plan. Can you see that, Matt, on the screen?
I can see it, top left.
Oh,
so that is. Sorry.
Do you see it on my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if you could just explain what this plan is intended to depict.
Yeah.
And
So photo one is that's the Liberty MID sign, which is internally lit, and then below that is the price sign showing regular and diesel price.
All right, and let me refer you to the photo in the middle, the big photo.
Okay.
Our property is the one where my cursor is on the left-hand side.
Yes.
And that's the intersection of Sumney Turnpike and Broad Street.
That's correct.
And 2 properties down is where the Marathon gas station is located?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I understand that these yellow arrows that are depicted on this plan refer to the various photos that are around the plan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It might be easier for me to refer you to photo 8 on the bottom.
Okay.
And that's a picture of the existing gas station, right?
Yes. The small convenience store as well as the canopy.
Right. I mean, and that canopy has the superimposed sign on it. I don't believe that sign's up there now, or is that correct? Or feature?
I believe it is up there now, yes.
Okay. The now again, you were referring to photo number 1.
Yes.
And photo number 1, if I understand it, is a superimposed sign that shows the Liberty logo as well as the gas station, I mean the gas pricing, is that correct?
That is the actual sign that's there now, currently.
And that sign is within the 75 feet of the intersection and 75 feet of the traffic control device and 200 feet from the intersection?
Yes.
Now, is that the same sign that was in place when Amera ran the gas station?
Yeah, we just changed out the lenses. We refaced the sign, basically.
Okay. And can you explain to the board why the red and green is being used for this sign?
The red and green, now it's standard branding package. So the red obviously is just regular gasoline. The green coincides with the diesel price, just to signify that there is diesel available at the location.
And how far is it my understanding that this sign is about set back from the roadway by about 12 feet?
Yes, that's correct.
And it's, and the facing of the sign is just along Town Pike on both sides, is that correct?
Yes.
And it doesn't face, or there's not another sign that faces Broad Street that has this coloring on it, is that correct?
Well, if you look at photo 3, now that's further back. Now that does face Broad Street. However, there is no price involved in that sign. It's just a Liberty brand sign.
Yeah, and it has no red or green lettering or LED.
Correct.
Okay, so the sign that we're just dealing with is the one that's shown on photo 1.
Yes.
Is that correct? All right. I think what I'm going to try to do is show you what was applicant's exhibit A3. Let me see if I can pull that up. Shoot. Nope.
It may be helpful, Mr. Shafkowitz, if you take down what you have and then pull up on your own screen what you want to show and then repost.
Great idea. I should be, with all the Zoom meetings we've been doing, I should be better suited at this. Let me just see, because the one, nope, that's not going to work. My apologies. I'm going to try this one more time. I'll see if I can find the other plan. Shoot. Yeah, my apologies. I'm unfortunately being a little bit illiterate with this program in terms of the other signage, the other sign that we had prepared, which was intended to show the canopy logo sign and have a little bit more detail on the pricing sign.
Dave, I have it
Maybe-
on my screen if you want me to.
Yeah, can you
show
share
it.
your screen?
Yeah,
Yeah,
give
that'd
me
be
one
great.
Everybody see that?
There you go. Thank you, Matt, saving the day. Appreciate that. Why don't we have this marked as applicant's exhibit A3? And we'll call this our signed photo package. Now, Matt, I appreciate you pulling this up. This plan was prepared by your sign consultant, so to speak, right?
That's correct.
And the photos that are on the bottom, they depict the existing station with no canopy logo, and then adjacent to it is what's proposed for the canopy logo. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's superimposed on the canopy.
Do you have any, as was mentioned by Mr. Rico, do you know if the canopy is higher than 20 feet?
So the canopy is, I believe, 14.5 feet high, and then it has a 3-foot fascia. So in total, it's 17.5 feet.
Okay. And the signage that's being proposed is approximately 2x9 lettering for Liberty that just says Liberty. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're proposing that on 2 locations on the canopy, which I understand may require a variance, but maybe to potentially eliminate the need, we can propose it on the frontage solely for the Susquehanna frontage. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what we're proposing is facing Town and then on the other side facing Broad.
Great. My thought is that to the extent that we may require a variance, the applicant would be willing to limit the Liberty sign to just, if the second one required a variance, we can limit it to just facing Susquehanna.
Yeah, you mean Town?
Town, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yes, yes.
And the Liberty is intended to be illuminated?
Yeah, the Liberty sign, it's they're channel letters illuminated internally with LED lights.
Okay. Are you familiar with the intensity requirements for LED lights and illumination in the ordinance?
I'm not familiar with the ordinance. However,
It
they
was the
are,
same,
I'm sorry.
I said it was the same requirements that we had reviewed previously.
Yes,
Is it the intent of this particular sign not to exceed any of the intensity requirements in the township's ordinance?
no, we will not exceed any of the ordinances.
And I believe it'll be like a white or an opaque color for that sign.
Yes, it is a white front.
And it will be, you understand that you're required that the sign to be turned off within a half hour of the station closing?
That's correct.
And a timer will be provided to make sure that that occurs?
Yes,
And with proposing the sign to face Sumney Town, do you believe it'll have any negative impact on any of the surrounding neighbors?
I do not know.
I know there's a sheet 2 to this particular exhibit. Can you move up to sheet 2? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but sheet 2 is a better picture of what the pricing sign is supposed to reflect. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if I understand it, the pricing sign is essentially of the same size and dimensions as the existing sign. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the existing sign, if you're looking at the photos, is the one depicted on the left side of the exhibit. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that sign is also illuminated?
Yes, it's internally illuminated.
Right, and it obviously contains some of that green coloring as well. The sign that's proposed is where the LED red and green lights are going to be installed. Is that correct?
Correct.
And as we discussed earlier, this sign effectively depicts how far it's set back off the road.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said, does this photograph effectively depict how far the sign is set back off the road?
Yes, the picture was taken from the street.
Right. And do you believe that this sign will, based on its proximity to the traffic control signal, will pose any danger to the traveling public?
No, I do not think so.
And is that based on your experience with the 40 other similar gas stations that your company owns and operates?
Yeah, we've never had any issues with our LED lights close to any intersections or other street lights.
Will this sign change during the day, or is it just set once a day?
Now, it'll be set once a day. There is a chance that the price will change, but that may happen at most once a day.
And the site doesn't flicker or flash?
No, it's just a standard one color light. It will not flicker or flash or change without someone actually manually doing it.
And it won't obviously depict any messaging?
No.
I think that would complete the questions I have of Mr. Galasso at this time.
Okay, thank you. I do have one question. I just want to make sure I understand. So with regard to the canopy, I guess is the only part that you're proposing to illuminate the actual letters to Liberty and not, for example, like the white portion behind the American flag?
Well, I mean, if the board liked the American flag lit up that way, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, the only area is the Liberty portion that would be back LED lit, as indicated on those plans.
Okay.
Essentially like a single light. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else on the board have any questions? Mr. Hitchens, do you have any questions?
I do, but it's a partial question for Mr. Van Rieker as well. If I'm understanding the application correctly, One, you are proposing only one canopy sign along the Sumneytown Pike side, which will consist of channel letters that will be LED illuminated from the inside, correct?
That's correct.
And the existing canopy where that channel letters will be located is a total height of 17 feet at the very top, correct?
That's correct.
17 and a half.
17 and a half.
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah, I appreciate the accuracy.
Yeah,
Mr. Reeker, I'm looking at the original notice that we had advertised. We had advertised, obviously, for relief related to any signage above 12 feet. Would this canopy sign fit within that requested relief for above 12 feet?
Thank you for bringing that up, Patrick. So the answer is I misspoke. The 20 feet is a shopping center height for C commercial. The ground height would be, or the building height is equal to, or on the building, a sign, a facade sign, is a maximum height of 12 feet. So a ground sign, the freestanding signs you see in this photograph, and the canopy signs, which would be considered a facade sign, the maximum height is 12 feet. So a variance of 5.5 to 6 feet would be required for the canopy sign.
Okay, and just so the applicant is aware, we did advertise for that. And so
We did.
you were not withdrawing that portion of the requested relief as it relates to the canopy sign or as it would relate to the freestanding sign. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure those were clarified on the record for the board.
Great, thank you. Do any other parties have any questions?
Mr. Connolly, I do have a question,
Oh,
and that is the pricing sign. Is that a two-faced sign?
I can answer that. Yes, it will face on both sides on Sumneytown.
Okay, thank you very much.
okay, thank you. Do
Hey,
any other?
Mark,
Oh, yeah.
Mark, it's Jack. It's Jack. I just want to ask this question. I also have a on the document that I'm looking at on my desk. There's a sign number 2, which is Liberty. I believe it's on Broad Street, but there's no pricing sign. Are we not talking about that sign at all, or am I lost in that translation?
Yeah, that is, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I mean, that is an existing sign. There is no pricing.
The Liberty's,
proposed, and I think, I'm sorry.
the Liberty's there now?
The Amera is going to be replaced with Liberty.
Okay, and that, so all you're doing is replacing the signage. Everything else stays the same. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just remiss by noting that I wanted to have Mr. Galasso testify as to the legal requirement for this type of sign, if I may. So just real briefly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Matt, are you still with us?
I'm still here.
Now, as I understand too, this illuminated sign for the pricing, is that something required by state law?
Yes,
So in other words, that the pricing, so it's visible at night for those who may be using the gas station,
that's correct.
similar to how the old sign was set up.
Just a separate question on that, because I know that there had been discussion about turning off the sign. So I guess, are you saying that the LED price sign that would be on, you're saying that would be on all the time, and then I guess the canopy sign, is that the one that you would be turning off near closing? I just want to clarify that.
Well, it's actually a great question, because I think Mr. Galasso would testify that the station will close at 11, right, Matt?
Station closes at 11, yes. And legally, you cannot pump gas without someone being there working the station. So, we would be able to turn the lights off.
And that includes the pricing sign.
Correct.
right, good.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, good. I'm glad we got that clarification there. All right. So does anybody else have any questions, and including any other parties? Okay. Great. All right. And then Mr. Heleniak, I believe you're here on behalf of the township, correct?
Yes, but the township has no questions.
Okay. Do you have anything else to present?
No.
Okay. All right. So if there's no further evidence to be presented by the parties, so now's the time that we'll take public comment. Mr. Reeker, have you received any correspondence regarding this application?
No, I have not. I should hasten to add correspondence from the applicant amending certain portions and communication with Patrick, but none from neighbors, none from other stakeholders.
Yes, thank you. I apologize. I was not clear with my question.
No, I think you were. I'm just being overly, exacting. Thanks. Sorry.
Foster Digital, do you have anyone waiting to give public comment on this matter?
There is no public comment.
Okay. All right. So now that the public has been given an opportunity to comment, does anybody else have anything else to say on this matter before we go ahead and close the hearing?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just thank you for the board and your time this evening. I appreciate listening to our application. Hopefully, the board will heard sufficient testimony to allow for the application to proceed.
Great.
And
Thank
again,
you.
thanks for your time.
Thank you. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing. Now, Mr. Hitchens, could you give us a proposed motion that if the board were so inclined to grant this matter, that we would be able to read?
Certainly. And Mr. Shafkowitz, correct me if I don't have all the relief corrected or correctly stated. But if a member of the board would like to make a motion on application number 21-03 for Ramaco Fuels, I'm sorry, for McDade
Realty, LLC.
Realty, for property located at 868 Sumneytown Pike, Lansdale, PA, to approve a variance from section 195 35.I.2b to permit a sign with red or green lights to be within 75 feet of a public right-of-way and with 200 feet of a traffic control device, and a variance from section 195-35J2L2 to permit a canopy facade sign that exceeds 12 feet and that shall not exceed a height of 17.5 feet. Consistent with the testimony, exhibits, and conditions as presented by the applicant.
Okay, would any member of the board like to make a motion here along those lines?
Again, any board member can just say so moved if you would like.
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second,
Okay. All right, all in favor of the motion as presented by Mr. Hitchens, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the ayes so have it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Mr. Chair.
Mark. I didn't want to interrupt while you were in the midst of a motion. I can't screen share, but did I hear, again, I apologize. I've got the original package. I'm also looking at signage, which had fuel pump signs proposed. Are you removing those from your application, Matt or David, or what happened?
Yeah.
It's these.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, those are being removed as well. We're not going to brand this pump, so to speak. We think that everything, if the board's comfortable with what they did tonight, that would help a great deal with what we need. So.
Thank you very much. Sorry for the late chime in on that.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to give everybody a moment. If anybody would like to leave the hearing, just to, let everybody leave if they would like. Okay, so moving on to our last hearing of the evening. It is hearing number 21-05, and that's Geisele Automatics for two parcels located at 800 North Wales Road, North Wales, Pennsylvania, 19454. Parcel numbers 56-00-05977-00-6 and 56-00-05976-00-7 for a variance from section 195-25.K.3D1 to permit a building setback of 65 feet where 200 feet is required from a residential district, and a variance from section 195-25.K.3G3 to permit parking setback of 65 feet where 100 feet is required from a residential district setback variance from residential district to construct a concrete pad with driveway access improvements for use of machinery and equipment at the existing site. Or in the alternative, an interpretation that proposed concrete pad with driveway access improvements does not need zoning relief under the doctrine of natural expansion or under the existing language of section 195-25.K.3D1. The property is zoned LI Limited Industrial. And I would also mention as well, I believe, I know in this, the address was given as 800 North Wales Road, and I believe in the application, it was given as 800 Walnut Street, which is obviously a variant name of that street. All right, would any parties here identify themselves for the record?
Chairman, my name is Joe Clement. I am the attorney for the applicant. Also on Zoom, not in the same room as me, is Paul Yaskowski. He is our project engineer. In the same room with me, slightly off camera, I do have Michael Follett, who is general counsel for Geisele Automatics and Gwynedd Manufacturing, and also William Geisele.
Okay, thank you. And are there any other parties here?
Gregory Holeniak on behalf of the township.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, Mr. Hitchens, and I believe we might have already entered some exhibits here, but if you want to either go over that or if you have any additional exhibits.
That is correct, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as a refresher for the board and the applicant, this matter was opened at the last hearing in April. At that time, I marked exhibits, board exhibits ZHB 1 through ZHB 9. And again, just as a refresher, they were as follows. ZHB 1 was the proof of publication and legal notice. ZHB 2 was the verification of posting. ZHB 3 was the township website notice. ZHB 4 was the parcel map with addresses for the mailed notice. ZHB 5 was the applicant's application with addendum. ZHB 6 was a zoning plot plan prepared by Erweiler and Walter, dated 3/24/21. ZHB 7 was public comment, which was an email from Brent Shellhammer to the ZHB solicitor dated April 16th, 2021. ZHB 8 was public comment, an email from Patrick Davis to the zoning officer dated April 27th, 2021. And ZHB 9 was a continuance request from the applicant's counsel dated April 27th, 2021. Since that time, Mr. Chairman, I've received additional documents that I would like to mark as ZHB, as zoning hearing board exhibits. ZHB 10 will be a revised plot plan that was submitted by the applicant, prepared by Erweiler and Walter, dated April 26th, 2021. And ZHB 11 will be an email from a Carrie and Steve Johnson, dated May 21st, 2021. And at this time, Mr. Chairman, I would like to read that email into the record.
Yes, certainly.
And this is an email sent to the zoning officer, Mr. Reeker, and it states as follows. Mr. Rieger, we have the following concerns regarding the variance requested by Geisler, hearing number 21-05, May 25th, 2021. 1. Drainage issues. There are major drainage issues from the runoff of Geisler's property, and adding more concrete and impervious surface will make this issue worse. Their failure to dispose of their leaves properly by leaving them in a pile in the back of the property also contributes to this issue. I have included pictures and videos demonstrating this drainage issue. 2. Shooting firearms inside and possibly outside. As their footprint increases, this issue gets closer and louder to our residential property. 3. Expansion. As this variance is requesting a concrete pad to be constructed, what is the possibility of a building being built at a later date since the variance is already in place? 4. Property value. As their commercial site is already closer to a residential area than current codes dictate, the encroachment will possibly affect property value. Please acknowledge that you received this email and will be forwarded to the zoning hearing board. Please send us a link to the hearing on Tuesday, May 25th, as we know our neighbors are interested in participating in the open forum. Thanks, Kerry and Steve Johnson, 168 Mendham, MENDHAM Drive, North Wales, PA 19454. Mr. Chairman, just so you're aware, this email or this public comment was provided to the applicant's counsel in advance of tonight's hearing. And I believe both Mr. and Mrs. Johnson were provided links to be here tonight as well. I do not know if they are on the call.
Okay, thank you. And then, as you mentioned, there were some attachments included with that as well, correct?
That is correct. There were 2 video files and 2 JPEG files.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Mr. Clement. At this time, would you like to have your witnesses sworn in?
Yes, Mr. Connolly, that would be great.
Okay, Mr. Manchardi, could you please swear in the witnesses?
Yes, let me do one. Well, I don't see them here. I see just one.
That should be sufficient for now. Mr. Yaskowski could just be sworn in, and Paul, make sure you turn off your mute or turn your cell phone so we can hear you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. If you could state and spell your full name, please.
Sure. My name is Paul Yaskowski. That's YASKOWSKI.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And Patrick and Van, as a housekeeping matter, Paul's been before you many times before, has been sworn as a expert witness and qualified as an expert witness many times before this board. I would ask that we do that now just as a formality based on the knowledge that you have of him.
Mr. Clement, just so you can identify for the record, you would like him to be qualified as an expert in
zoning and land use.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, I would agree with Mr. Clement. Certainly this board's prerogative, but I'm sure Mr. Rieger and I would both agree that that would be an appropriate thing for the board to do.
Yes, I unless anyone has any objection, certainly we can admit him as an expert witness here.
Thank you. And also, as another housekeeping matter, Mr. Heleniak and I had an opportunity to speak earlier today, and I believe there are 3 conditions that the township would like to place on the application, which we have agreed to. Those 3 conditions do address many of the items that the neighbors have brought to our attention. We did have the opportunity to speak with Ms. Johnson, also with 2 of the neighbors, Mr. Davis and Mr. I think it's Shellhammer as well. Shellhammer, excuse me. So we were able to address some of their concerns with respect to some screening. But Greg, I don't know if you want to have those entered now, those conditions brought up now.
With the board's pleasure, I'd be happy to enter them onto the record at this point. And Joe, I believe it's 4 as was broken down. But if there's anything that the 4 conditions are as follows, as agreed to by the applicant in our conversations prior to the commencement of tonight's hearing. The first is that stormwater management facilities will be installed on the property to account for the new improvements to this township's satisfaction, buffering in trees that are in accordance with the design parameters contained in zoning ordinance section 195-9.0.1 will be installed to the township's satisfaction in the area between the new concrete pad and the adjacent residential properties, and will be submitted to the township via a landscape plan. The applicant, number 3, the applicant will submit a grading plan and receive a grading permit from the township for the proposed improvements. And number 4 is the applicant will submit as-built plans for the proposed work once constructed and any improvements that were installed by the applicant in recent years. Is that just to confirm, Mr. Clement, that is what you agreed to in our conversations, correct?
That is correct, and the applicant accepts those conditions.
So the township would ask that any approval granted tonight by the zoning hearing board would include those conditions as conditions of approval.
Thank you. So if it pleases the board, then I would like to make an offer of proof and then have Mr. Yaskowski adopt what I have said as his own testimony and then open it up to questions from the board.
Certainly, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So this property is located at 800, sometimes referred to East Walnut, sometimes referred to as North Wales Road. You did describe, Mr. Connolly, the property in the outset here. What we are proposing to do is construct a roughly 20,905 square foot concrete pad towards the rear and side of the building. Most of that pad, in fact, 13,900 square feet, will be constructed over an existing stoned area that is at the rear of the building. So we're really adding about 7,000 square feet of new impervious coverage. We have agreed to construct stormwater management facilities that will handle that additional impervious coverage. We are proposing to use this pad because of a large forge machine that is being delivered into the facility. So this is a manufacturing facility. There's precision machines that are used as part of the manufacturing process. There's a very large forge that needs to be delivered, assembled, and then installed into the building. That's the primary purpose of this concrete pad, as well as to clean up the rear of the property where there are some existing storage areas. In our conversations with our Station Drive neighbors, it has been indicated to us that they would like to see the portion of the concrete pad that is closest to them used as a storage area primarily when it is not being used for purposes of moving a forge into the building. We don't have any objection to that, and we will add that as part of our request for zoning relief this evening. So that would be relief from section 195-25B11C to permit storage within 100 feet of the side yard residential neighbors. We have requested relief also from section 195-25K3D1. That's necessary only if the concrete pad is considered part of a building. We have made the determination, I believe, that just out of an abundance of caution, we would ask for that relief. If in fact this is not considered a building, then we do not need that relief. We also request a relief from section 195-25K3D2. The only time that would be necessary is if this concrete pad is considered to be a driveway or akin to a driveway, and as a result, we would need relief to be able to put that driveway within 100 feet of the side yard. And again, we are proposing a 66-foot side yard setback. And finally, we did request relief from section 195-25K3G3 to allow some parking area. Again, if this concrete pad is considered a parking area within 100 feet of the side yard. We do believe that this will be used. We intend to use this at times for some vehicle storage or some vehicle parking. But again, primarily this will be for storage and then also for the moving of the forge into the building. So with that said, this property is quite unique. It is a 13.6-ish acre parcel. A large portion of the property is encumbered by a drainage way that's out towards Beaver Street. There is a large stormwater basin at the rear of the property that will continue to handle the vast majority of the stormwater on the property. If we do look at what is now zoning hearing board exhibit 6 and 10, those are both of the plot plans. There is a proposed bio retention basin at the edge of the concrete pad. That will handle, again, any additional stormwater that is generated by the impervious coverage that we are adding to the existing impervious coverage. The only difference really between the two plans, the new exhibit ZHB 10 and the old plan ZHB 6, is that we have added a few trees at the edge of the concrete pad between ourselves and our Station Drive neighbors. We have proposed 13 evergreen trees there, but as we just agreed to on the record with the township, we are going to kind of change that a bit. We're going to double load that section of trees so it will comply with the township's landscape requirements. With that being said, I have nothing further to provide to the board at this time. I will ask Paul to adopt what I've said as his own testimony and then open it up to questions from the board. So, Paul, you've heard everything I've said?
I have.
And you've been present for the entirety of this particular hearing?
Yes, I have.
And if given the opportunity to adopt what I've said as your own testimony, you would?
Correct.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you covered it very well.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Connolly, we'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay, thank you. I had a question about, I know you mentioned that there's a stormwater basin in the back. Now, because I know that, are you stating, is it closer to where the train station is, or is it closer to the point that's near where that Mendham Drive cul-de-sac is?
It's closer to where the point is, Mr. Connolly, and actually it's very close to where we have that blocked out text on the plan that says the proposed concrete pad is to so on and so forth. There is also, it's not shown on the plan, but there is a head wall and culvert that is almost in the point of the property. And there is what looks like kind of an L that runs towards Mendham Drive and then out towards Station Drive. If you see that on the plan there, it's a very narrow strip. That's actually a stormwater easement area. And there is the water will then, it goes from daylight to pipe in that area.
Okay. One other question I had, because let me just go back here to that public comment here. Just with the noise mentioning of the shooting of firearms. So I guess you're saying this concrete pad, this will be used as, it sounds like it's going to be used as storage primarily, but would there be any chance of there being the shooting of firearms on this concrete pad?
No, Mr. Connolly, there would not be any shooting of firearms on the concrete pad.
Okay, I just want to double check that. All right, thank you. Does anybody else on the board have any questions?
I have a question about looking at the plan, and I don't know if we can put the plan up, but at any rate, where the proposed pad is going to be, what was the setback from the building prior to the proposed parking area?
Prior to the proposed concrete pad, there is a setback area there that, let me see, I believe it is 58 plus 66 feet. So that's roughly 100 and I'll call it 126 feet, roughly 124 feet.
If I may, Mr. Clement, would you have any objection if I shared my screen to show the plan that Ms. McHale is referring to, just to make sure we're all on the same page?
Not at all, Mr. Hitchens. Thank you.
Ms. McHale, I'm showing what I marked as ZHB 10, which is the revised plan. Is this what document you were referring to?
Well, I didn't have the new one with the plantings. I have the old one, but the size of the pad hasn't changed. So that was what I was asking. In other words, what is the current distance to the neighbors from the building? and then looking at the proposed distance between the neighbors. So,
And
Yes,
so
Ms. McHale.
I'm
Sorry.
trying to, I apologize. I'm just trying to zoom in here. That might help
right,
focus. Okay.
Thank you, Patrick. So Ms. McHale, you can see that our requested variances, we would like to have a 66-foot side yard. We now, if you look at the concrete pad to the right, it's difficult to make out. It's somewhat obscured by our little trees
right.
that are on the plan, but it's 58 feet and 58 and a half feet is the width of the proposed concrete pad on the side of the building. So if you add those two together, you get roughly 125 feet that the edge of the building would be from the neighbor's property lines. If we move further up the plan, you'll see that the parking areas that are existing today are within 30 feet of the neighbors towards the front of the property. And there's also some small structures which are closer to the neighbors than the building itself, including the small brick building that's now center of screen that you can see as 66 feet and 3 inches from the neighboring properties.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, do any other members of the board have any questions? Mr. Reeker, go ahead.
Sorry, not a board member, but when it's my turn. Thanks, Mark. Good job, Paul and Joe. Couple of questions though, just to be clear. So in the space of the new slab between the building and the Station Drive residential neighbors. So in that, what we would describe as, was it like 112-foot setback or something? What uses do you contemplate in that area ever?
Then we contemplate using that area for storage, and actually having spoken to Mr. Shellhammer, the neighbor right across the way there, they actually indicated there was a preference for that, in that it would put more of a barrier between themselves and potential users of that site.
So when you say storage, what do you?
Material storage, perhaps a vehicle or two at times.
And then I think you might have mentioned that occasionally that slab, I understand the original premise was that you would need that paved area occasionally to move, and almost immediately to move equipment around that is valuable and intrinsic to the operation. So I get that part of it.
Yes.
So when you're moving all that equipment around inside and outside, how many hours or how many days do you contemplate, or does the applicant contemplate that would take?
Well, we're hoping that we only have to move this forge in one time. And unless something catastrophic happens to the forge itself, it stays in the building and we don't have to take it back out. There's an existing forge that's in the building. It's a little bit smaller, much smaller actually, than the one that the applicant is proposing to install. If there were ever a failure of that forge as well, it would have to come out of the building and be potentially worked on. But in the over 5 years that forge has been in the building, it's never had to come out. So it's not anticipated that we would need this to be used for that purpose very often. But the initial moving of this large forge in requires 2 very large forklifts on either side of the forge. To actually, the forge comes in pieces on large oversized tractor trailers. It's then assembled on the pad, and these very large forklifts kind of shimmy it into the building. And in order for it to be shimmied into the building in the appropriate fashion, we need the swing area that this pad provides.
Thank you. So then there was a discussion briefly, when you say vehicles, what do you mean by vehicles, Joe?
There may be some vehicles parked there from time to time.
Such as, I mean, what type of vehicle?
Cars, regular vehicles.
So they're overflow like their employee parking?
Perhaps.
Would that be fair?
Perhaps, yes. Visitor parking or overflow parking then.
And then there might have been one of the early memos, and forgive me, it's been a while. Is there any, do you contemplate, or does Geisler contemplate any servicing of equipment outside on that slab area, or is it merely moving occasionally this forge and maybe other similar kinds of items?
Yeah, the only time that would ever be used for something like that, then would be there are some marketing vehicles, I'll call them, that are on the property right now. If those vehicles, they're kind of antiques, and if those vehicles need to be maintained in any way, they would be brought onto the pad for that purpose. But no, there's not. This isn't going to be used as a area to really use for repair of machinery or anything of that nature on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you. And then one final question. So is it fair to say that there will not be activities between the building wall and the residential neighbors in that part of the slab that would create sound or noises after the evening hours? I mean, is there some sort of, after 9 o'clock, nothing will ever occur out there? Is there some kind of a blanket statement you could say about that?
Absolutely, we can make that statement unless there is an emergency that area would not be used after, say, 9 p.m. For that purpose. That would cause a noise or some disturbance to the neighbors.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Mr. Connolly,
Go
I
ahead.
have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that has to do with the stormwater management. Since the neighbors provided photos of some of the stormwater issues as part of your proposed pad, you are doing some remediation or amelioration of stormwater management. Is that meant to do anything to current stormwater issues within that development?
Mrs. McHale, it will capture the stormwater facilities that we are proposing will capture the stormwater and pursuant to PADEP and Montgomery County Conservation District regulation will capture, slow release, and treat that stormwater from the additional impervious. As far as what the existing condition is now, some years ago, Geisler did in fact install some additional stormwater facilities in the rear of the property over and above what they needed in order to help address that issue. But as far as the existing condition and, you know, when these very large storms come through, those issues relate to way upstream from us. It's not something that's generated on this property at all. The issue really is that you have almost like a weir system with the drain tracks on the left. They're elevated somewhat. You have the drainage channel, which is sometimes called a seasonal stream at this point, that's towards between the building and Beaver Street. There's nothing more that we can really do on the property to address those upstream issues, but we certainly will not make the condition any worse, and we hope to make it better.
Thank you very much, Mr. Connor.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hitchens, do you have any questions here?
Just two things, Mr. Connolly. First, Mr. Clement, before you are done, I would ask if you could have the appropriate witness just affirm the statements that you had made. I'm not sure whether that's Paul or whether it's the representative from Geisler, but just please make sure for record purposes if you could have that done. I know you were probably planning on doing it anyhow, but just as a reminder for myself.
Of course.
And then two, Mr. Connolly, I'm looking at the screen of the participants. I see that the person who is labeled number 2 PS Brent has had their hand up. And I don't know for what purpose, but I wanted to bring that to your attention in case if PS2 Brent wanted to either ask questions or ask for some sort of status. I just want to make sure you were aware of that, just so that we make sure that that's reflected as well.
It'll help if I'm off mute. Okay, thank you. All right, so I will write that down. Okay, so do any other board members have any questions before we go ahead? Oh,
Mark, I just have one real quick one for Mr. Clement. What are the normal hours of operation of this building?
The normal hours of operation of the building are, I'll ask Mr. Geisler that, and I'll have Mr. Yaskowski affirm it, but the normal hours of operation of the building?
We have 3 shifts, and those shifts run around the clock 5 days a week. Generally, we're there approximately half a day on Saturday.
So
So
it's
approximately
5 days a week, half a day on Saturday.
generally, that's
So
what we're
it's a
doing
20
now.
24-hour shift Monday through Friday and a
That's
half
right.
on Saturday.
Yes,
Okay.
so just to make the record clear, a 24-hour shift Monday through Friday, and then a half day on Saturdays. But again, as we indicated earlier, we would limit the outdoor noise on that side of the property so that we were not making so we were not disturbing the neighbors.
Yeah, that should be captured by our notes on this. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do any other parties have any questions here?
The township questions.
And do you, Mr. Clement, if you want to go ahead, I know, and just verify with the witnesses that everything is, as stated is correct. You can go ahead and do that.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. So, Paul, again, you've been here for the entirety of this hearing?
I'm sorry, Joe, a motorcycle just went by.
Yeah, that's all right. You've been here for the entirety of this hearing?
I have.
And you've heard everything that I've said in response to the questions that have been presented to us?
I have.
And if given the opportunity, you would adopt those responses and what I have said as your own testimony?
Yes, I would.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and Ms. Moody, did you have your hand up to ask a question? I apologize if I missed you.
Nope, good here.
Okay. Okay, all right. So at this point, and I just want to verify, Mr. Heleniak, do you have any exhibits or testimony to present on behalf of the township?
No,
Than what you already stated earlier?
Correct. The township has no testimony or exhibits to offer besides the agreed upon conditions that we've already put on the record.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So at this point, we're going to do public comment. But as per what Mr. Hitchens has mentioned, I just want to verify with regard to, I believe I had the list of people up, but give me 1 second. I believe it's number 2 PS Brent. I just wanted to see, do you have any comments here with regard to this matter?
Brent, it's *6 to unmute.
Yeah, hi, this is Brent Challihammer from 130 Station Drive. I just wanted to speak out in support of what's going on here and the variance. During our time here, since Geisler's moved in, they've always been very attentive neighbors, and we're very confident that if anything should arise and a problem were to come down the road, that they would address it. So I'm speaking for myself, and I usually can speak for my neighbor, Pat Davis at 134 Station Drive, that we are in support of this variance. So thank you.
Thank you.
You could spell your last name, please?
Sure, that's SCHELLHAMMER.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shellhammer. And actually, let me just check with Mr. Reeker. Mr. Reeker, are there any other public comments that you have received, any correspondence from the public that you have received regarding this matter?
Nothing that, everything I received in writing, I forwarded to Patrick Hitchens. I did receive a phone call or two. And that was they inquired about information and who to contact, and in the name of the applicant, which was Joe Clement, or information about tonight's hearing. So that was maybe 2 or 3 of those kinds of calls. And then the written documents I forwarded to Mr. Hitchens, who in turn forwarded them out to applicant's attorney and to the board.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Foster Digital, is there anyone else here who is requesting to make public comment in this matter?
There is no public comment.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so, and then does anybody else have anything else to say before we go ahead and close this hearing? Okay, hearing none, the hearing is now closed. Mr. Hitchens, if the board were so inclined to grant this matter, could you provide us with a proposed motion?
Certainly, Mr. Connolly. So if a member of the zoning hearing board would like to make a motion for hearing number 21-05 of Geissley Automatics for 2 parcels located at 800 North Wales Road, parcel numbers 560005977006 and 560005976007 to approve a variance from Section 195-25K3D1 to permit a building setback of 65 feet where 200 feet is required for a residential district. A variance from Section 195-25K3G3 to permit parking setback of 65 feet where 100 feet is required for a residential district, as well as a variance from Section 195-25B11C to permit a storage within 100 feet of a residential district in order to construct a concrete pad with driveway access improvements for use of machinery and equipment at the existing site consistent with the testimony and exhibits presented, as well as subject to the 4 conditions that were stated on the record relating to 1, stormwater management plan for the new impervious surface, 2, a landscape plan that is acceptable to the township, 3, the submission of a grading plan and the obtaining of a grading permit, and 4, the submission of final as-built plans for the new improvements as well as any other improvements, existing improvements on the site.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hitchens. And would someone like to make a motion here?
I'll make the motion for you, Mark.
Okay, thank you. And would someone like to second? Oh, Ms. McHale, you're on mute.
I'll second.
Okay, great. So on the motion that Mr. Hitchens had read, and where we have now first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
And the ayes have it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
All right. And now let me just go ahead here. Let me just see here. So at this point, our next regularly scheduled meeting will be held on Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021 at 7 p.m. And one thing that I would note is that that hearing is actually going to be held in person in the township meeting room, and it's not going to be an electronic hearing. So would someone like to present a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Would someone like
I'll
to
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.